In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, type in Old Dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we have a great show for you today. We have a gentleman named John Maxim, and John is a self-made millionaire and hands-on expert house flipper who has fixed and flipped over $500 million of real estate for profit, charity, and the community. He started his real estate empire by living under a stairwell, creating $1,000 a month in passive income by renting out his home to 9 friends. Today, the 20-year real estate veteran has a massive portfolio and still flips 100 homes a year. From wholesaling to property management, nightly rentals, house flipping, mortgages, lending, commercial, residential, John has held almost every job in real estate. He has founded multiple 7-figure businesses, and all the while using his success to give back. Maxim holds biannual treasure hunts in Salt Lake City, burying $10,000 cash for winners. Now, this is going to be interesting to talk about. In his spare time, he flips homes for families in need free of charge. John is a father of 5, failed stand-up comic, hobby filmmaker, and background beekeeper who has saved over 70 raccoons in the state of Utah. Well, John, I am really stoked to meet you here, and I want to find out, how did you get into real estate with that kind of a background?
Just accidentally got into it. I never woke up and thought, man, I want to get into real estate or be a real estate flipper. You know, you heard on there, kind of a failed stand-up comic and filmmaker. Entertainment is always kind of more what I dreamt about, but then while I was going to college in film school, me and a couple of roommates decided to buy a house because it was cheaper than renting. Simple motivation. Mm-hmm. And we got this house that had a detached garage. Originally, it had a 1-car garage, and that had been converted into like a dance studio or something. So we had the brilliant idea, well, the 4 of us can put bunk beds in this old converted garage. And then we can rent out the 4 bedrooms, and then we don't have to pay anything. And next thing we know, we're like, wow, this is amazing. And this is way before Harry Potter ever came out. I moved in under the stairs. I had a dresser and a mattress on the floor under the stairs, right off the basement living room.
Oh my goodness.
And I moved in down there so that I could rent out my bunk spot for $250 a month to somebody else. And so it kind of became the big joke, the house of 9. We had 9 guys. It was kind of a unofficial fraternity there. And it was kind of an eye-opener. I don't know if it was my light bulb moment, but it was an eye-opener for me that, your money in real estate can really work for you, because I, at that time in my life, pretty much donated plasma and lived off the rent that we received passively from renting out to all these guys. And then, of course, all the parties were at our house because we had all the people.
It sounds like you've got an instant fraternity there, definitely.
Yeah, it kind of worked out that way. So it kind of got me started into real estate, where with that, I thought, oh man, I need to go get my real estate license. I had somebody kind of recruit me to work for her, and I was her assistant for the first year, and I made a whole bunch of money working for her as an assistant, just as an agent. And I, of course, thought I was pretty awesome. So I quit that first year. I made like, I don't know, $80,000. I stopped going to college because I thought, we got all this money in real estate. And then I went out on my own, and I don't even think I made more than 10 grand. I didn't give her credit for her SOI and all the years of experience and all that stuff, And so I kind of dabbled in the agent thing. I played in mortgages, but never really like took off or got successful in the beginning there. And then right before the market got super crazy, I got divorced, and things really took a turn for me. And I was starting to lose my home to foreclosure. And this story is a little crazy. Forgive me. Some of your listeners might tune out right away because it's kind of bad back then. But, I'm going through a divorce. I'm losing my house to foreclosure. And I had gotten really good at loan modifications and things like that. So I kind of knew how to push my mortgage off and off and off and off and off. And I wasn't making good decisions. I wasn't in a good place. And I got really far behind on my mortgage. And I still had renters and things. And we finally get a notice that they're going to sell the house at foreclosure the following Monday. Me and my roommates were watching the movie Hot Rod, where he decides to jump over a bunch of buses to raise money to pay for his dad's cancer. And we're all sitting on the porch as I'm giving everyone the news, like, hey guys, they're doing an auction on Monday and we're going to have to move out. And we kind of joked, like, why doesn't anyone ever do that stuff like they do in movies, like the Goonies go find treasure, the Hot Rod thing. So I had this little car, this little station wagon. I said, you know what, I'm going to go on the internet and say, I'll light this car on fire if you'll loan me $20 and I can save my house from foreclosure. And so I started this kind of internet campaign. It was before GoFundMe or anything. And people just showed up, and I raised $20,000 in 3 days.
What?
Yeah, it kind of went viral. It was this crazy thing, like, oh, this guy's going to light his car on fire. It's stupid, and let's loan him some money. And, and what happened is I got the money, and I was able to get it in a cashier's check. And, when they auction off your house, it's actually at a courthouse.
Yeah, courthouse steps usually, right?
Yeah, courthouse steps. So I go down there, and there's this attorney with his little booklet, and I run in there. I haven't had any sleep for 3 days. I look homeless, waving this check. I'm like, hey, don't sell my house. Don't sell my house. And he's like, well, we're not even ready yet, but show me what you got. And so I hand him the check, which fully reinstates my loan. And he's like, okay, yeah, we won't do the auction. We'll reinstate your loan. And I sat there and I looked around at these courthouse steps, and there's, I don't know, 18, 25 guys, and they're in shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts, and they're bidding on these houses for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And that was my light bulb moment when I'm looking at these guys who make a living doing this. And I thought, these are my people. I mean, look, they're young, they're working on houses, they're bidding. Like, this looks so much fun. And I just, after that moment, got my house saved from foreclosure. I did light my car on fire, which I had to spend a weekend in jail for, because it's not something that's 100% legal unless you do all the right things. And I paid everyone back, actually, the $20,000 after time with interest, just like I promised on my blog. But I just set out to learn everything I could about buying homes at foreclosure, and that's what really kind of started my journey in kind of a specific way towards doing all the things that I've now done in real estate. I had to really kind of hit rock bottom and find out that was even out there and it was a possibility, So
did you connect with some of those guys that were standing out there, and that's where you started to basically learn how to do that?
Not at that moment, but I did know a guy who did that. He wasn't there that day, and so I kind of reached out to him, and he had me go to some RIA meetings, and I went to a couple of those, and I got online and just spent hours and hours and hours watching YouTube videos and reading blog posts and all these kinds of things about how things are done. And I didn't go the route of a mentor right away, but this one guy, Mike, who had been doing it, he kind of helped me a little bit with some things, and I could call him with questions, and that was great. And then when I finally flipped my first house, he was the guy I called, and he ended up partnering with me because I couldn't figure out how to do the rehab money. I was able to find a loan and some of the other stuff, but I couldn't quite figure out how that worked. And so I ended up partnering with him and kind of doing my first flip with a partner / mentor at the time.
And how much did you make on the house?
I made $6,000 after 7 months. It was actually not great, but it was a big learning experience. It started me on kind of another journey too, because it was a house that was over 100 years old. And I kind of learned that we went way overboard because of the age of it and not taking that into account. My next flip, which I did without a partner, I did make like 30 grand on it. It was like the biggest paycheck of my life. It was amazing. So just the rest is history now.
That's great. That's great. Now, you started specializing in older houses, didn't you?
Yeah. And that also kind of happens by accident, but it's, in real estate, in whatever market you're in, your reputation becomes what you do. Right. And so I live in a really old part of Salt Lake called the Marmalade District, where all the homes are kind of built in the 1880s. And so I own an old house. The house I lit my car on fire to save is an old house. So I've done work and repair on it. And the first flip I did was an old house. And so when I started to not be really scared, it took 5 or 6 years before I think anyone would call me a specialist, but started to not be scared of the old houses and get more of them under my belt, my reputation started to be like, oh, a wholesaler finds out that he's got a 100-year-old house and he has 10 other guys walk through it that are just balking at the enormous cost it would take to rehab it. They call me and I become the old house guy. And so then I do more old houses as a result, because I kind of get that reputation of somebody who's not afraid to take down these older homes.
Well, that has to be that definitely has to be a skill, because one of the first homes I got was a home built in 1900, and all kinds of surprises were happening all the time. Then I had another one in 1925, and same kinds of things. You have to be pretty bold there, and definitely understand what you're doing. Do you kind of go in there firsthand, just replacing the mechanicals, or what do you do to rehab a house that old?
Almost always, I'm gonna, almost without question, unless it's been updated recently, which does happen, I'm gonna have to redo electrical and HVAC. Plumbing is a little different. Plumbing, there's a lot of galvanized plumbing, which can become a problem, but it isn't always. And so that we kind of have to take as it comes. But a lot of guys will go in and instantly replace all the cast iron drains and dig up the cement and do all this, when cast iron actually holds up really well, so long as it was installed correctly. And there's things you can do to line those and preserve them and protect them so that they can last another 50 years. And so I don't immediately, I'm not going to just change everything right away. I usually take a really close look. A lot of electrical nowadays on 100-year-old homes has been updated at some point in the 70s or 80s. And so long as we're not talking about knob and tube, I don't go all the way unless I have to. Putting in a new kitchen, sometimes I have to add a new breaker box or something and update those. So I would say probably on half my homes, I'm forced to do all three of the mechanicals, the big three. But not always. And that's kind of the thing with old houses. The way you make money on those is knowing what you don't have to do to sell it, and kind of restraining when you don't have to do things, Well,
I would think it'd be real tempting, with some of those houses are so beautiful and ornate. If the Victorian ones and so forth, that you just, want to go to town with it to kind of restore it back to the beauty of when it was originally built. But I imagine that would be extremely costly. Do you sort of modernize it inside as opposed to sort of, restoring the old look of that house?
Just like everything with real estate, and I'm sure on the stuff you've done, you've found this to be true too. I kind of let the buyers guide me, and of course, I don't have buyers walking through at the beginning, but I've done enough real estate to kind of know, like, what do buyers want? And, there's different types of buyers. There's buyers who want a brand new house out in the outskirts of town, and there's buyers who want 100-year-old Victorian, right? But what do those guys want? And what I've found is they want the charm of the old home, the thick baseboards, the archways, the high ceilings, the exposed bricks, some of that stuff. But they don't want the function of the old. There's not very many purists who are like, well, I want my tiny kitchen and my 6 fireplaces and, some of the things that these old houses inherently have. They want open concepts still. They want big modern kitchens. They want to have the function and the charm. And so I'm always trying to kind of marry those two things, update the kitchens and bathrooms, because buyers don't really want copper tubs with gravity flowed toilets and things like that, right? They want a functional, nice, modern shower and bath with all the things. So it does kind of require kind of deciding, like, what are we going to do with this specific house? And some of the reason why a lot of other flippers shy away from old houses is they like to just have a kind of a cookie cutter, like, we're going to do the same thing on every house. And with the older ones, you got to kind of sit down in each one of them and make decisions, because of the way that they're all custom, really, once you get that old.
Now, a lot of flippers don't know who their buyers are going to be, it's my understanding, right? I mean, you're basically taking a house, redoing it, and, redoing it to market so that you'll get your estimated return, right?
Well, yeah, right. But I mean, you don't know exactly who your buyers are going to be, but you can kind of, based on the other comparables and the research you do on other homes and flips, I mean, there's certain neighborhoods that I know certain types of buyers require different things. Here's an example of that. We've got this town north of us, like 30 miles, called Ogden, Utah. It's a little lighter market. It's not as expensive as Salt Lake, but very similar in everything, really. Well, here in Salt Lake, we have these older neighborhoods where I have many, many times flipped 100-year-old houses where the floors, we haven't leveled the floors. We leave them crooked, and they've got slope to them, and you put a dresser up and it leans forward, leans back, like things that you think, oh my gosh, there's no way a buyer would want these. But in downtown Salt Lake, the historic buyer has let us know that they're okay with that. They would prefer the charm and the historic. They're not really that concerned. And obviously we can level a floor, but it's like you were saying, it costs a lot of money. And to go in and just say, because I would like a level floor and everyone else would, you don't really know that until you try it out. This is, like I say, one example. So then I did my first historic home up in Ogden, and I thought because Ogden's market was a little cheaper and softer, that I could get away with the same thing. And so I did his house, and we had a floor that sloped towards the front. We check the foundations and make sure they're not sinking anymore and that everything's okay, that it's not going to be a continued problem. But after 100 years, things settle. Anyway, the Ogden buyers let me know that Ogden folks are not okay with that. They don't care about the charm as much. And so I ended up, after it sitting on the market for 4 months, I ended up having to level the floor out. That I thought, man, if this house was down in Sugar House in Salt Lake, I could totally get away with this and it would have sold it for top dollar. But up here, these buyers have let me know that that's not going to fly. And so now when I do a old home in Ogden, I know that I've got to make sure the floors are relatively level. That's a cost that I'm going to have to do when I flip houses up there. Do you redo the wooden floor to try to maintain the original wood floors on this? Yeah, the surface. Yeah, as much as I can. I mean, first of all, again, it comes down, I want to make money. I got to be clear that I don't just restore old homes because I love old homes. I do. But I also need to make a profit. The fun thing about hardwoods and restoring them is, you can get away with that for $2, $2.50 a foot. Whereas if you bring in even LVP or laminate, you're going to be spending almost $3, even for the cheap, like Home Depot stuff, once you bring install costs in and everything. So refinishing hardwoods is actually cheaper than most of your alternatives. The only thing cheaper than it is carpet, really. And there's certain spaces that you don't just want to throw carpet on, right? So I refinish floors a lot in the older homes. And that's the thing, is that buyer who loves old homes, they love refinished floors. It's one of the things that draws them to those, you know?
Oh, I think they would. Yeah. Do you have certain carpeted rooms, or do you do the whole thing?
Typically, in most homes, I'm going to carpet the bedrooms. Unless they have beautiful hardwoods already in them. Occasionally, if we have a main floor master or something. But to save on costs for a typical median home price home, we're just going to we'll carpet the bedrooms and leave the hallway and kind of main areas as like a hardwood or hard surface.
Right.
Because that's kind of what people love.
And you are still flipping all your homes in Utah or in your area?
For the most part, I did take a few years where I thought the grass was greener, and I tried homes in other areas. I did some in Dallas and Connecticut and Arizona and Oregon and California, kind of all over. And I just found that I'm not that kind of investor, because you need to be a very, very organized person to manage your flips out of state, and you need to have a really solid team. And I'm not an A-type investor enough to do that. If I can't actually show up, I'm not good enough at follow-up to make sure those things get done. And so I left a lot of money on the table on some of those out-of-state properties. Now, I did just do a home in Las Vegas just last year, and I have another one in San Diego, but I have a partner on those, kind of boots-on-the-ground partner that allows me to do those. And so I only pick those up in specific cases. Most of the time, I like to be within 40 minutes of the property, because my investing style, I need to go check it out, and I need to be able to call someone and visit them there and talk to them there and see it, you know?
Right. Well, interesting. That's now you've really been through the spectrum in terms of a lot of real estate activities. Have you wholesaled a fair amount, or is that just something you started off doing a little bit and decided it wasn't for you? Or
no, I actually I don't wholesale as much in the sense, nowadays. I think you've been doing some of this before. Wholesaling was like a buzzword, right? Uh-huh. The wholesaling that we understand it as nowadays is, they spend tons and tons of money on marketing, and they're finding the buyer, and then they're just, instead of closing onto themselves, they're just selling the contract, right? And so I do wholesale, and I've done a bit of that marketing and stuff, but again, doesn't really fit my investment style, and it's a lot of work. But I have the belief that if it's a deal, it's a deal. And so I say yes to everything that's a deal. But I also learned that I can only do so many at a time. And when I get a deal that I don't have the capacity to do, but it is a deal, I will say yes to that deal, and then I'll wholesale it. And I typically, my bio says I flip 100 houses a year, and that's flips and wholesales. I'm usually in the 50s, 60s of actual flips. And then I usually wholesale another 30 or 40 a year that are just deals that I found that are good, that I don't have the capacity for. And so I sell them to other investors.
Are you dealing direct with sellers or wholesalers? I mean, who's your biggest customer there?
That kind of ebbs and flows with the market. Man, 2017, 18, almost every house I had, I bought from a wholesaler. And then the market kind of changed, where wholesalers, as things have appreciated, wholesalers can also get more, because the investors are kind of jumping up with them. And I found that I thought I was paying too much to wholesalers. So then I dealt more with stuff on the MLS or direct to sellers. I kind of mix it up. When I teach people how to find houses, I always tell them, like, you need to hit everything a little bit each day. You don't want to neglect one of your tributaries to your deal flow. You want to call agents, you want to call wholesalers, you want to call other investors, you want to do a little bit of marketing with maybe Deal Machine or something like that, and mailers and things. But I actually spend, it's in my calendar, an hour a day finding, and I usually focus on all different avenues at different times. And so right now I only have one of the 22 houses we're working on that we got from a wholesaler, which is completely different than 2 years ago.
Wow.
So it just kind of changes with the market, and that's, I think, the key to success is kind of changing with it,
And you've also got rental property too, right?
Yes.
And
yep.
is that part of your strategy is to build up your rental portfolio, or is that just, it depends on the house and the situation?
Yeah, once again, I like to look at everything. People always try to pigeonhole me, wholesalers and stuff like, well, we just want to know what you want to buy so we can bring you those. And I'm always saying, I want you to bring it all to me, because if it's a good rental, I'm going to keep it. Definitely early in my career when I was kind of cash poor, I flipped some homes that I looking back now, I wish I would have kept. And I'm sure every investor has that story. But now as I've got 5 kids, I'm getting a little older, I tend to see the cash flow as kind of a better place for me. And so I have been turning more of my deals into long-term rentals than just straight flips like I used to do. But I once again, it just kind of depends on the deal.
And your bio mentions commercial. What have you gotten into on the commercial side?
I do flips with commercial, essentially. And it's more of kind of a flip / wholesale situation where I'll find pretty dilapidated commercial properties and then put them under contract and either try to sell them or take them down. And I don't usually do major improvements to them. I usually will do what in the commercial world they kind of call white boxing, I think, where we just kind of demo it out, clean it up, spray everything white on the inside, and then kind of sell it to developers or other people in the interim. So I do have one that we've been working on for 3 years, but so we've held it for quite a long period of time. We've been able to rent out parking lot space and stuff. It's just one of those unique deals where we can just find a way to make money, and now it's under contract and we're going to make way more money than we probably should for stuff like that. That's and good. So it's not something I definitely focus on, but I'm always looking. I love hunting the deal down. It's one of my favorite parts. And so I'm always jumping on LoopNet to see if there's any commercial stuff that might have been neglected or overlooked, or where maybe I can see a highest and best use that commercial agents, just like everything, they get a little lazy and think, there's only one way to do this. And that's where some opportunity can be created for me and other folks, Yeah,
well, there's a lot of repurposing going on in the commercial world right now.
Definitely. And that's, you'll hear that industrial is one of the highest, had the highest appreciation last year. And it's not so much because there's so many, industrial businesses that need space. It's because people are buying those and then repurposing them to like mixed use office and retail, industrial, and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of a fun field to play, and definitely not my bread and butter, but I do have some pretty good successes with big projects here and there when they make sense.
That's great. Well, you jumped into this with just, you had a short time, it sounds like, with a mentor, and then took off on your own. In that process, though, I imagine you encountered some mistakes along the way. What would you say is maybe one of your biggest mistakes in that process?
I spoke at a lunch and learn meeting, and the guy introduced me as the guy in Salt Lake who has failed the most, which is a piece of my reputation that I'm proud of. And it's true. I have found, one of my biggest skills is my ability to just take massive imperfect action. Just jump in, bite off more than I can chew, and chew it anyway. But with that comes what's been probably my biggest failures have come out of overextending myself, where I will just take on another deal and take on another deal and take on another deal, and next thing I know, I'm holding deals that I should only be holding for 4 to 6 months for 18 months. And, interest never sleeps ever,
yeah.
Right. And so a lot of my biggest mistakes come from me just not really respecting my capacity to do deals. And I even, just in the last 2 years, I got up to where I had 47 homes at once.
Oh, gee.
And I remember waking up after closing on home 47. And stress isn't, I'm in a stressful business, so this doesn't happen to me very often, but I woke up kind of in a cold sweat, like, oh my gosh. I think I'm paying somewhere in the range of like $9,000 per day in interest for all this inventory. And house number 47, I won't even be able to start for 6 months. And, I just started doing the math in my head, and it got really scary. And it all came down to me just overextending myself and kind of running faster than I'm able to run. And so I would definitely caution people, the more success you have, the more you think that, you can do more and you can do more. And if I did, that one was easy. I didn't even have to walk into that house and I flipped it. I can do 5 more of those, but that's not a reality. Scaling up a flipping business is one of the biggest challenges of doing it. And so it's definitely can get scary.
I bet. And what about on the other side, something that you did maybe early on that ended up being one of your biggest successes?
It goes back to that same thing, just taking, massive imperfect action. I don't have a lot of fear. I've been on the bottom. And after my experience, then, I in 2007, I made $1 million doing spec homes. And then I lost more than $1 million in 2008 and 2009. I didn't even know that's how it worked, but it is. Mm-hmm. You can lose more money than you can make. So it was, the recession really kind of hit me, but through some of those things, it's just shown me that, there's always an opportunity to bounce back. And yeah, I've been on the bottom before where I've lost all my money and these things tend to work out. It's never the end of the world like we think it is. And especially after you've kind of come through that storm, looking back, you realize that it wasn't even near as bad as you gave it credit for. And so early on in my career, I kind of had no fear. And I remember this fourplex that I bought that I had no reason buying. I had to beg and plead to borrow the money for it. And I ended up borrowing money at 20%, which is way more than I've ever paid before or since.
Ouch.
Just to try and get this deal done. And I ended up having to pay pretty much retail to get it done. But, I just knew that it had potential. And it ended up being, I still own that now. And it ended up being, I've been able to do a cash out refinance on it. And it just pays for so many things. And the cash flow on it is, I'll probably never sell it. It's such a good deal. But I really had no business doing it. On paper, it didn't make sense. But I just kind of took action anyway. And I think that that has served me better than anything else, is just taking action when I feel good about a deal.
Sure.
Just doing it. Yeah.
Well, we have a audience or folks that are approaching retirement or already in retirement, and they're looking at real estate investing as a means to be able to either generate additional cash flow for their retirement or to maybe extend their nest egg. There's a lot of different reasons why people are looking at real estate. What advice would you have from your experience that would be helpful for somebody starting later in real estate investing, and trying to generate a good return?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and I've seen a lot of those folks in my. I do a lot of teaching fulfillment for seminar companies and other things. One of the things I would suggest is not to spend a fortune on a seminar education or something like that, because I find a lot of those types of people, in their 50s, 60s, they've retired, they have money, and they go spend $40,000 on a education program, when I don't know if that is maybe the best use, because the problem is they've got to take some massive action. And what happens a lot of times is they get into analysis paralysis, where they're trying to do everything perfect because this is their nest egg. And that 40,000 could have been, I think, done in a lot better way. I mean, people need to know themselves and be realistic. Flipping a house is hard.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that everybody wants to do. They want to flip houses. They see it on HGTV. They make it look easy. They see the things on Instagram and YouTube where they're like, I made a whole bunch of money with no one else's money. And they kind of get this idea that it's something that you can do. But, I'm getting close to my 50s. I'm not going to want to be flipping houses as much as I do without a big crew and people. It's a lot of work. It's kind of a young man's game, to be honest. So to answer that question, I would say, folks that have this money might want to look a little more into creating passive income by letting their money work for them. Whereas, you get into house flipping, you end up doing a lot of work. People don't quite realize that. It's not just paying a contractor, and the less work you do, the more you pay, right? So you can hire a contractor and then you find you don't have any profit at the end because he took it all.
Right.
So that's a negative thing. So one of the things I suggest people look at is lending, especially if they've got a pretty good nest egg. I mean, it doesn't have to be a ton, but people like me are paying 10 to 12% for our money all the time. And it's not scary like cryptocurrency or stocks where it can just disappear after a while. I mean, if you're not into those things, it's secured by real estate. And so it actually ends up being a very safe investment for people. And you kind of let the young men do the young men's game. I mean, find people who are actually doing it, who have been successful at it, and ask them, will you pay for money? And you'll find that they do. So that's always a good thing to do. And then I have investors who have invested their nest egg with me, and they get to come over to the house and see the flips and ask me questions and do all these kinds of things. And so they can kind of get a mentorship by lending money to an investor rather than just paying some company to kind of give them a bunch of info they can find on the web and other things,
Do you recommend that people go through some sort of a service company that will do the collections and stay on it and do that kind of thing? Or do you think they should be active on that part of it as well?
It kind of depends, I think, on the amount. I think if anyone's talking about less than $100,000 or $200,000, that they can probably just do it on their own. If you're going to go above that, then you're probably going to want to have a company or do some other things with you. And there's a lot of people that you will want to bring in. You're going to want a good title company and attorney to kind of help you with this lending and stuff like that. But if you find the right investors that you're going to invest in, a lot of them will have a lot of that kind of put together. And, it really comes down to trust between those people. But it's a great way to get started and to learn rather than just paying for education. You can learn by lending a successful person your money and saying, hey, as part of this loan, I want you to walk me through the steps. I want to show up at the house and do these things. And, we're all happy to offer that, especially when they're lending us their money, that we're also paying them on that interest that never sleeps. So it can work out really well.
That's great. Great advice. You mentioned you're approaching the old dog status here, and you have this great business and many multifaceted businesses, it looks like here. What's sort of your future? What are you looking at? What excites you about the future of your business and where you're going?
That's a great question. I'm pretty happy and I want to stay that way. And I've found things that I get to do that I love. And that's kind of, just working on these homes, creating good deals for people, helping others to kind of bring this in, bring this dream home for them as well. And so, kind of future is going to be probably less flipping and more passive income properties, more business ownership. We started a property management company that does both nightly rentals and long-term rentals. And that's been great to kind of get into because I've always hated my property management companies. And so I wanted to do one that worked better. And so, the future I think is going to be more of this. Retirement is kind of a funny thing when you can do it passively. I kind of think I'll be working forever, but I'll probably be spending less time in dingy old basements looking at foundations and more time looking at, cap rates and different things that I can do on rental properties. And I think as time goes, I'll do more passive and less active, but I just love what I'm doing. And so that helps,
Well, yeah, I mean, it looks like you do. And one thing that just really impresses me is the way you're giving back too. And even it's like this buried treasure thing, and flipping houses for people. I mean, can you get in a little bit into those areas and what you're doing to give back as you've succeeded here and become successful?
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody, when you really talk to them, wants to give back. And the more successful you get, the more that becomes a thing, because you start to realize how blessed you really are, because success doesn't come to everybody. And so there's a lot of people that need help, and identifying those and helping in ways that you can help maybe different than someone else is you find yourself drawn to that the more successful you are. And I think that goes across every industry and everyone that I've met, just kind of as a thing. So I'm good at flipping houses. And this was 3 or 4 years ago, we started at Christmas. We would find a family, and we would try and work something out where we could flip the house for them. And, and it started out small, where we would just like redo a kitchen or finish a basement or do something. And this last Christmas, we found somebody who had 2 of their members of their family die, and things have been pretty rough for them. And we actually got them a trip to Mexico for 6 days, a 7-day all-inclusive thing. And then we flipped their entire house in 6 days. It was actually astonishing, but we brought a lot of people from the community together and got everything donated. It was kind of an amazing thing to see the goodness of people. And so I try to do that every Christmas, and we'll see if that turns into even more. I don't know. The treasure thing is just, kind of goes back to let's give, but do things that we love to do. And it was right at the pandemic where a friend of mine and I were talking, and everyone was just kind of locked up in their houses, and it was just, the feeling in society was just very dire. And, we got these stimulus checks from the government that I don't even think we felt like we deserved, because we were doing okay, and the pandemic didn't crush our business like it did a lot of others. And so we just thought, we've always loved treasure hunting. It's kind of something we grew up on, Indiana Jones and the Goonies and things like that. And, we were kind of joking, like, wouldn't it be amazing if somebody did this? And so we ended up burying, our first one was $5,000, and we wrote a poem up, kind of inspired by the Forrest Fenn treasure. I don't know if you're familiar. The guy, he buried like $3 million of artifacts, and people have been looking for it for, 10 or 15 years. And he just wrote one poem, and, a lot of people wonder if it's even there, but we thought this is such a great idea. So we wrote a poem and buried it out in the mountains, and some guy found the first one in 3 days, but it was a massive success, and people were just so happy to have an excuse to get out and hike as a family and to go looking. And people are discovering trails in their own backyard they didn't even know existed. And here in Utah, we have the mountains just surround us. So we thought, man, we should do this again. And we've done 5 treasure hunts now. Our last one was actually $20,000.
Wow.
And it was massive, like 15,000 people take part in it. And it just turns into a really fun, amazing way to give back. And the stories that come out of it aren't even so much about the one family who finds the money. It's, like marriages get together, and teenagers are hanging out with their parents and not just playing video games, and people are losing weight. And it just ended up being such an amazing thing for the community, around. So we're probably going to keep doing it for
what a blast.
As long as we can.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It is great.
Wow. That's neat. Well, our time has been zipping by here, and we have moved into a segment we call Wrap It Up, where I ask you a series of quick questions, kind of like a lightning round. It's just basically you're sharing resources that have been valuable to you with others listening. And if you're ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, same here. That was the
pretty great.
one that changed my way of thinking, I'll tell you. How about just a favorite general business book?
I got to say, some people say this is dated, but I feel like a ton of my success has come from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think it's timeless. I mean, I've gotten out of speeding tickets from that book and gotten deals and all kinds of stuff. I think I can't say enough good things about it. I try to read it once a year. That's probably died down in the last little, but it's a phenomenal book.
Great book, yeah. How about a website that you use for your business on a regular basis or for success?
I don't do a ton of web anymore. I find that YouTube is probably the best helper to me. I mean, Bigger Pockets is great for people just starting out to get a lot of answers and stuff. But even Instagram, following hashtags like real estate investing, I get a lot more value out of some of those mediums now than I do just the web.
Gotcha. Favorite app on your phone?
Sheesh. Favorite app? I don't know. It's probably YouTube. I mean, I once redid all the electrical in my house from how-to YouTube videos. Something I don't recommend, but I did have a licensed electrician come in, and I did a couple things wrong, and that was helpful. But I think YouTube is a phenomenal way to share and see how things are done. Almost every search I do on YouTube is how to blank.
Yeah, it's the same here.
You can just learn from other I that are doing it. So I would say that's probably my favorite.
That's great. How about a favorite quote?
I'm going to go back to Star Wars on this. Master Yoda. Try not, do, or do not. There is no try. It's just, even when I was a kid, the mindset of that quote, just letting you know that you just have to go forward and take action. I love it.
That's great. Great quote. And then this one, which I imagine you would probably have no trouble doing, is if you lost everything, all of your assets, and you had to start all over, knowing what you already know, and all you have is $1,000 cash, what would you do to relaunch your real estate investing business?
One thing I don't think people give enough credit for in, especially in real estate, is that your net worth is your network. And I would take that money. I mean, I would start going to RIAs. There's $100 right there, to join my local RIA or another one. I'd start going to those meetings. I would identify the real players at those meetings and see if I could take them to lunch or coffee. And I would start working with the people that are doing the business as quickly as possible. I mean, I wouldn't even need $1,000 if I lost everything and had $1,000 to start here in Utah, because I have such a good network. But if I was dropped into another place, once again, that's the first place I would start, is on building that network as quickly as possible, because that really is your net worth in this business, is the people that you know.
Yeah, I think I'm all with you there. Everybody says real estate's location, location, location. I think it's people,
Yeah, absolutely.
Relationships. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people here listening that would like to find out more about you, what you do, and what's sort of the best way for folks to find out and get plugged into what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the very best way is I have a very active Instagram account where we do a lot of flipping, and it's just on the John, at on the John with an H. And so you can, I respond to all my DMs there, in a short period of time, and it's a great way to get in touch with me. I also have a YouTube channel which is Flipping Off, which is kind of the joke that this is more goofing off than anything, and so we flip houses and show that, and so you can see me there. And then if anyone just wants to reach out, I'm happy. If they want to send me an email at john@utahflipper.com. I'm quicker to the DMs on Instagram, though, I'll be honest, than the emails.
That's great. Some people, I haven't quite got, I have my kids come in and they look at my social media and they go, Dad, there's people that wrote you like 6 months ago and you never responded. So I'm going, oh yeah. Okay. I've got to learn to that one. Definitely. John, this has been great stuff, especially, just that, niche that you found early on of older houses too, and continue doing it. I mean, that's really amazing. But just the way you've diversified and moved in so many different directions, and especially how you're giving back, all good stuff. So we have a tradition here that we have our guests close us out with their own hound dog howl. Now, I know Utah, they have a lot of coyotes and stuff, but maybe you can give us and you have a dog, right?
I do. I have an English bulldog, and she's getting to be old, and her howl is, I guess, a little different. Let me see if I can give me my best shot at that. So it's more like this. It's a she does that sound every time the fire trucks go by. So it's more of a gurgling, but she is making a howl with her. So hope that works out. And hey, I love the message you have here for people, and I'm really glad to be able to speak with you, and I hope to maybe do it again sometime. It's been great. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, I'd love to have you back on, John. You've got a lot of good stuff. I felt like I could have gone a lot longer here, but I maybe we'll save that for next time. So
yeah, for sure.
And I also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you take the time to listen to us really means a lot. And we would really like to let you know that everything that would happen today too, we have in our show notes, our detailed show notes. So you can get all the details of things that John's talked about and the links involved, as well as how to reach him. And that can all be accessed at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you're going to look for the show with John Maxim. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.